What's up, guys? Welcome to a new day. I'm Stephanie Ryder, and this is the 365 Shares podcast. It's January 30th, 2024, and this is the 30th episode of the 365 Shares podcast. Today's topic is Tradition 1, and the Big Red Book says, can we even have personal recovery without ACA unity? Our first tradition frankly says no. ACA members working the 12 steps recognize the need to place the group's survival ahead of their own selfish needs or their fear-based urge to control others. At first, I thought this might be a boring passage because group conscience is something that is so well accepted in ACA. We basically do everything by a vote and get consensus, and it can be anything as small as we've gone through all the readings or ahead of time. Would people like to wrap up the meeting early, or would they like to pick up another topic and continuing on the readings? Or it can be something as weighty as identifying someone who hasn't been treating people respectfully in the meetings and discussing whether or not people feel safe to have them continue in the meetings, or maybe even to shut a meeting down or to change a time or location of a meeting if necessary. But the more I read the passage in the Strengthening My Recovery book, the more my blood started to boil, because group conscience is not something that I have in my family of origin, and it's not even always something that we have within our ACA meetings. I've encountered issues with group unity in meetings, but I don't want to share any stories because I obviously want to be respectful of the anonymity of the program. So I found a few passages in the Big Red Book that I would like to share that I think capture the general feeling. There are a number of passages in the Big Red Book in italics, and that is a story that's been taken from a program member, sort of like a share, almost like a review of the program. This one reads as follows. When I came into the program, I heard people say, do it my way or I'll quit. This was my lifelong attitude as well. I did get angry and quit, and not just once. Each time I came back to ACA, the original group was still there, still pulling together and still moving forward. They were unified in their likenesses. I had run away because of our differences. My ego kept me a prisoner of my sickness. I wanted to overpower these people and make them do things my way, even though I knew my way did not work. I wanted to do to them what had been done to me. I soon discovered that bullying others into submission does not work here. When I understand that the unity of my program was essential to my recovery, I took my first real step away from the survival behavior I learned as a child. Now I contribute to the common welfare of the group by encouraging the group to work together and move ahead. Even as I wander back and forth on my recovery path, my ACA group remains stable. And this is something I've noticed and that I really take comfort in. There is a rapport, there is a sense of decorum, there is a way things happen in ACA meetings that feels unique because it's so much different than what I generally encounter in the real world. And it's very respectful. Nobody talks over each other. Nobody interrupts someone who's talking to try to caretake. If someone starts crying, you're not allowed to touch them or jump over with a tissue because that takes them out of their feelings. It takes them out of the experience that they're having, and it doesn't allow them to fully process the thought or the emotion or the memory and get rid of it. Knowing that you can go to a place where everything you say will be taken at face value and no one will shame you or try to give you advice after the meeting or try to stop you from talking or tell you that your feeling or your thought is incorrect makes it feel like a really safe place to be and to heal. The Big Red Book also says this. Listening to members complain about the meeting or group, one gets the sense of the meeting being dominated by a small group of individuals. Occasionally, one individual can appear to dominate a group. When this happens, group unity and the sense that all group members are equal suffers. The group's future and its ability to attract new members to sustain itself can hang in the balance. I'm Steph, and this is my share. The affirmation from the Strengthening My Recovery book says, on this day, I will be mindful that everyone's voice should be heard on group issues. If I can contribute my experience, strength, and hope, I will do so without expectations. Being open-minded and tolerant is humility in action. I love this affirmation. I love this tradition. As I said, I do not have a strong sense of group unity in my family of origin. There was typically always one person who set the standard or one person whose rule was what everyone else had to go by. When my grandfather was alive and was the patriarch, his voice was typically the one that we went by. And then after he died, my grandmother, who'd been under his thumb for their entire marriage, really emerged and believed that she was now the queen of the castle. Everything she said went. And for the most part, nobody in the family challenged her. The problem was she was extremely codependent. She was extremely fear-based. And most of the things that she wanted everyone to do were accommodating her anxieties, her fears, doing things that she felt would make her feel good, would make the family look good in the way that she wanted, would make her look like she did a great job raising everyone, would be things that wouldn't embarrass her. That was a really big one. She didn't want her family to embarrass her. So you had all these rules that you had to follow, and they were largely based on her insecurities, her lack of doing her work, her fears. And in my recovery, especially since my separation and my divorce, I really have adopted the idea that fear is not a good way to make a decision. One of the best authors, I think, on this is Gabrielle Bernstein. I've mentioned her before. I love her books. The Universe Has Your Back saved my life. I highly suggest reading it if you haven't already. She says when you have a problem, she uses the acronym of FEAR, F-E-A-R, and she says you can either F everything and run or face everything and rise. And obviously, in the book, in my life, the better thing to do, I think she thinks, is to face everything and rise. So it really upsets me when someone is using their fears or their anxiety to try to control me. And I think a lot of us have had this experience in codependent or dysfunctional families. It's like the analogy of the weakest link. A chain is only as strong as the weakest link, because maybe you have 10 links in the chain and 9 links have gone to therapy, or they've done some type of recovery program, or they have a spiritual advisor. But then there's one link that are holding everyone back. So then everyone who has so much potential to go out in the world and be their best self and to live in ways that are daring, in ways that are exciting, in ways that trumpet what they've learned to the world for the good of everyone around them, are so stifled by the people who are held together by this protective ego, by this false self, by all of their terrors that they haven't worked on, that they don't want to work on. And why would they have to work on them if everyone else is accommodating them? And I think that if you are in this situation, as I have been, as I really still continue to be in, I found my way back into it at Christmas with my family, you have different options. One is to take time away. You can lovingly detach. I am doing that right now. It's helpful to me. Another is you can set a boundary and say, I hear you. I understand why you're asking for that, but I'm going to go in another direction. You could bring your big red book to a family gathering and read Tradition 1 and explain to everyone about group conscience and say, nobody in the family's opinion is any more right than anyone else's opinion. And if there are 5 of us or 10 of us, we should do what the majority thinks that we should do. And they may say, F off, because they're a dysfunctional family. You probably have people who are used to being in charge, who are used to being the bossy ones, who are manipulative, who are controlling. They want things to go their way in perpetuity. So they may tell you that you're crazy, that they're still going to keep doing things the way that they want to do things. But again, you have the choice of whether or not you want to participate in that. And you could say, I'm not going to go along with it. Or you could say, I'm not going to come back. Or you could just decide to go along with it and say, you know what? I'm going to say my serenity prayer. I'm going to say I have control over myself. I don't have control over what my family wants to do. I'm going to let this one go. And even though I don't like it, I'm going to go along with it. There's really no right or wrong way to handle things. All I'm telling you is if you have been in a situation, or if you continue to find yourself in a situation where you are being dragged along or you're being forced to do something by a small minority of people, you don't have to do it. You can take a stand. You can just not show up. You can even, and I don't know if this is like a recommended way to handle things, but I'm not a therapist. So you could even just say like, yes, you're going to do it. And then at the last minute, say you got sick. I don't know. Like there's so many ways to handle controlling, manipulative people. And if the only way around it is to say there was an emergency, the person who was supposed to drive carpool can't, so now I have to step in. I'm not saying lie to people, but if you just have to say at the last minute, hey, something came up, say something came up. I don't know. Just do whatever you can to protect yourself. And please, if you haven't already, find an ACA meeting just to experience the way things can be different than what you're used to. And you might have the feelings initially, like we had in the readings, where people are resistant to this kind of unanimity, but you might really find that it's nice. I have been finding more and more that I love hanging out with my ACA people in meetings and outside of meetings and social events because I know that they're always going to treat me respectfully and that they're not going to try to steamroll me.